Hi, I'm Kathy Callahan-Brady, and welcome to In the Trenches. Today, I get to interview somebody pretty amazing. I'm excited. Thank you, Jeremy, for coming.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we always start with, why the heck are you a lawyer? No, we don't actually start with that, but I do.
I'm not sure either. That's a great question.
Seriously. You haven't always been an attorney, though, right?
No, I went to West Point Military Academy, so I was an infantry officer. And
little discipline
lots
there?
of windy roads, you know. Ended up going to law school, served as a JAG in the Army for 6 years.
Well, that's exciting.
And then decided to get out and came to beautiful Frederick and landed with Miles in Stockbridge, and here I am.
The rest is history.
That's right.
You donate a lot of your time to a lot of different adventures and stuff, so thank you for donating your time with it.
My pleasure. I enjoy it.
Yeah. I don't know whether you know this or not, but normally you can't be an advisor for FTSE. You probably don't know this.
No, I'm about to be surprised.
Unless you have started and run your own business and are still running your own business. I made an exception with you.
Well, thank you.
You're different. There's something about you that is very, very different. I joke around a lot, you know that, but I'm also very serious about things. And I'm not sure if it's your military background or what it is, but you're not a normal lawyer. And that's a compliment. You got a great sense of humor. No, you give phenomenal advice. It's always something that, the other entrepreneurs are a little unruly and they just throw it in. And then it's right at the end when we're getting ready to switch to somebody else. I kind of look up and I go, oh, there goes Jeremy, because he's been taking all of these phenomenal notes and he's getting ready to let them have it. But thank you for doing that.
Well, I guess for me, and part of it's probably my personality, part of it's military background, but I like to stay, you can get distracted with so many different things, and a lot of those things are important, but they're not necessarily important for what we're trying to deal with or resolve right here, right now. And so I do try to bring things back to a focused.
Which is important.
Yeah.
I always say entrepreneurs are a little bit like squirrels, like, whoop, off
Shiny object.
Exactly. So did you learn your discipline in the military? Or is it something you cultivated over?
Probably started pretty early because my dad's retired Army. So I think there was, between my Army dad and my middle school teacher mom, I think there was plenty of discipline going on in our house. So the Army was a good fit for me, in general.
Yeah.
But I always try to remain aware and cognizant in those advisory sessions that, in fact, I've never been an entrepreneur, and I'm not an entrepreneur now. And so in some sense, I don't know, I can't understand and completely empathize with everything, every pull and push that they have to deal with. But in some respects, it's really not much different from my practice of law. I may not own Miles in Stockbridge, I might not have founded it and grew it, but every day I work with businesses, and I know that you have to plan. You can't adjust from something if you don't have the something to adjust from. So you got to plan, you got to budget, you have to be disciplined. You have to adjust because you're going to make mistakes and errors, and you're going to have made the best choice you could with the information you had at the time. But I think working with a lot of businesses, from startups through well-established small and mid-sized companies, I just have a lot of experience and understanding from them, not necessarily that I know it all, because I certainly don't. But I've seen all of these different things with different companies, some of which work really well, some of which haven't worked well, which is why I get involved,
Right.
Because at the end of the day, all I really am, if you just want to boil it down to a single thing, it's a problem solver, right? Whatever your problem is, whether it's blowing up in your face or you're just trying to mitigate risk, that's really what you have your attorney for.
So what's your specialty?
I'm government contracting and litigation. So I
Okay.
spend a lot of time in construction litigation and commercial business litigation.
Okay. All right. That's the reason why you give such great advice, because you're actually seeing the end of the journey of all of the mistakes that has been made.
Well, that's really what gave me I started as a pure litigator, and I realized as I was working through the first couple of years of that I would be better serving my clients if I knew and understood more about business in general and more about their industry space. So I kind of started shifting a little bit toward a little more business orientation, and ultimately that's how I kind of got over to FTSE, because I thought, man, if some of these guys and gals knew what the outcome can be when things go poorly, or when they don't plan well, or they don't risk mitigate, or they don't seek wise counsel from somebody, this is what bad can look like. And sometimes you can do all the right things,
and it still
turns out
yeah,
poorly.
I've experienced that one.
Yeah. So,
yeah,
so it helped me to be a better lawyer, learning more and more about business. And then a lot of times the counsel I give at those meetings, I mean, I might go to an advisory session, listen to something that's going on, and know that's not my wheelhouse. As an attorney, that's not my practice area. And I'll go back and socialize something with my colleagues at the office because that is in their wheelhouse, and then I'll be able to bring that back.
I always appreciate that when you do it, because you've done that several times, found us somebody really good that was a specialist in a specific area. So thank you for doing that.
Any lawyer who tells you they know it all is a lawyer you should probably avoid.
I feel the same way about coaching and consulting and everything else. There's no way we can know it all. Different story, but anyways, so I'm trying to think in terms of where I want to go at this point. I mean, I love some of these, I know. So you've been, it's a year and a half now? Or almost?
Yeah, about a year and a half, I think.
Yeah, so you've seen a good handful of the clients. You've watched them sort of on their journeys. Some of them are exciting. Some of them just want to choke. No kidding. All startups, the way I look at it, after a while, there is a theme that kind of goes through them. It's like they have a lot of the same issues. I love that we started off talking about focus and productivity, because that is almost all of them's struggle. If you were to give them just sort of general advice, I think it would help any startup, anybody who is actually thinking about starting a business. What kind of advice would that be? Or what's your best advice that was ever given to you?
This might sound a little simplistic, but I had a boss at some point who said this to me, and I don't know if, I'm sure he stole it from somebody else, but he said, chop the wood in front of you, stack it neatly, help the person next to you chop their wood, repeat. Right? And if you just do that every day, whatever it is you're shooting for, whatever, that was in the Army, so whatever the mission is, whatever the goal is, you'll get there. Now, I mean, that's very simple, right? Like chop the wood, stack it, and help your buddy. But sort of packaged within it is you always have some sort of task in front of you, and you've got to prioritize the gazillion tasks you have. You have to figure out, when you look at your calendar, how you're going to allocate your time against what you just prioritized. And then when you're in that piece, you just need to go at it with, I almost hesitate to say this, but you need to go at it with controlled violence, right? Like, you got to be all in. Otherwise, what's the point of doing it? And I know as an entrepreneur, because I've met you and so many others who are either in the very early beginnings all the way to have built, sold.
Starting all over again.
Yep. They've done whatever they've done through their career, that the successful folks are those who burn the candle at both ends. And you can't do it forever, right? You've got to have some balance. But they prioritize, they focus, and then they go hard at what it is that's in front of them. Maybe it's building your business plan, maybe it's focusing on budgeting, maybe it's finding that new employee, it's finding a connection, a networking environment within your industry space, and then bringing the right people in to help you, because you can't do it all on your own.
And you can't know it all.
Right, you've got to build a team, and your team is going to be composed sometimes of employees, sometimes of consultants, sometimes of people who are in your specific business space, and then sometimes you got to go outside of your space, because new and fresh vantage points will make you realize, oh, I've never thought about it that way. So you develop a solution to a problem that exists. I mean, you've heard me say this 100 times. What is the defined, unique solution that you're bringing to the table? Because if you just are providing a product or service that's like 50,000 other companies, well, you're either not going to be successful, or you're only going to be moderately successful, because you're going to spend more time fighting to get in to a marketplace than you are hammering that marketplace, getting in and being wildly successful.
Unique value proposition. So I have a visual now with this wood. It's great advice. I've never heard that before.
And most of that's not legal, right? Which is why lawyers historically have been called counselors at law, right? I mean, there's a big piece of counseling that doesn't have anything to do with regulatory compliance or making sure your operating agreement is all correct, or preparing for litigation, or protecting your intellectual property, or whatever. There are a lot of other things, like, have you talked to an accountant about that? Because you're asking me.
Right.
That's not my space. Who's your accountant? Well, I don't have one. Well, you can't not afford to have an accountant.
Or an attorney.
Yeah, or an attorney. You don't have to call them every day.
Right.
You don't have to be shelling money out all the time to service providers to help you, but you need to know who you trust, that they're the right price, that they have the capabilities and the competence in the area that you need them in. So when it is the right time to pick up the phone or go have a meeting,
You've got the relationship.
Yeah.
And you've got their cell phone.
yeah, and you don't start that process on Google.
Yeah.
You start that process by reaching out to your colleagues and say, hey, who have you used? Well, I use this one guy or this one gal. Suggest you don't use that person.
Right.
Or I use this other person, and they were really good. And they connected me to a broker when I was looking for new space. For, we're leaving Fitzy and we need to land somewhere.
Right.
They connected me to a back office support person. They connected me to a great mentor. They connected me to a banker when I needed a line of credit. They connected me to, I spent a lot of time doing that. That's not billable, but it's growing
The
my
relationships.
client. It's being on their
Yeah.
team and wanting to
Right.
see them be amazing.
Right. So I almost want to throw you a curveball, not because it's a curveball, but I just thought of a question that I think a lot of people, and I don't know if you have an answer, but we subscribe to the whole lean startup method. And how do you get your business up and running as quickly as possible, making money without spending a fortune? And unfortunately, entrepreneurs, they love shiny objects, and they spend too much money in the beginning. The one thing that they always try and circumvent is the legal, because and you hear it all the time too. They're thinking about me and they bill me. How do they subscribe to Lean Startup, be covered and protected, have an attorney in their back pocket, but not spend tons of money? And I also want to say thank you, too, because Miles and Stockbridge has always been, many people see it because it's such a big firm that it's going to be incredibly, incredibly expensive. But what you've done for our startups, you've taken care of a lot of Fitzy startups and graduates and stuff. So thank you for that. You guys have figured that one out. I don't think that that's actually necessarily true anymore. But what would you What would you recommend for them if you were starting your own business to still keep it, I don't know, without any surprises and to be able to kind of budget for it? Is that a curveball? That is a terrible one, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I think it's, one of the most important things. I have to do this in my profession, obviously, getting new clients, marketing and developing a portfolio is getting out and networking, because you've got to find people and be targeted in that, right? If the Chamber of Commerce is a good place for you to be networking with people in your industry space, or who are prospective clients, or where there might be prospective employees or helpful and useful service providers, go to Chamber of Commerce events. If the Chamber of Commerce isn't the right place, maybe it's some sort of industry-focused association that you should be circulating in. One of the great things about FTSE is you have such a diverse group of folks here in industries, in where they are in their journey. Some of them return folks where they've started something great and they're starting something new. And if you see them back here, or you see like the John Rowleys back here helping other folks, you're only going to get that by going out and networking with the right group of people who can help to give you sound advice.
Yeah.
And through that process, you're going to meet, the folks that aren't helpful. And sometimes that's just as valuable and important. But I've found a lot of those connections, you're not necessarily going to find an attorney there or an accountant there. But you're going to find someone you trust. And when you find that person you trust, you value their advice, then you want to ask them those type of, well, who do you use? And why do you use them?
Right.
And what do they cost? And how responsive are they? Right? And then you get to that firm and you talk to that attorney. And, at Miles, we have, I'm on the advisory group E, but I go back and leverage my colleagues all the time. So I might be the face that's there, but my colleagues are really generous with their time in saying, oh yeah, they should be thinking about X, Y, and Z. And then sometimes I'm just taking that information back. Sometimes I'm inviting them to come in to meet someone else in my office and say, hey, you really need to talk to Kendall, or you need to talk to Joe, or you need to talk to Laura, or whoever is the right person. And then we kind of, we're the big law firm in Frederick, but most of us are long-term players here. We live here, we work here, we play here, we raise our families here. And there's a certain amount of satisfaction that comes from seeing a small company in your community, someone who you see on the street, someone you might go to church with, Nick, right, from our group. We go to the same church. It's, in some respect, it's neither here nor there, but I see him at the advisory group. I'm inspired and half the time don't understand all of what he's doing in his space.
Yeah.
But then, I see him, I see his wife, I see their kid at church, Another person, our kids might be on the same baseball team or football team or something. We're in the same Rotary. So there's something really fun about helping them grow. Well, our rates are a little higher than maybe smaller firms in the community. And we work really hard to figure out a way when you come in, like, look, Jeremy, I know I need a lawyer and we'd like to use Miles, but I don't know what your rates are, but I know I can't afford them. Okay, well, let's do it this way. You tell me what you think you need. I'm going to listen. I'm going to try to process it a little bit to figure out if what you think you need is actually what you need. Maybe I'm going to give you some other options. And then we're going to figure out how we can package it in a way to get you what you need at the price that you can afford. And it might be that we cut our rates or we fee something. We've done that a number of times for FTSE clients. to say, like, look, we know we're going to take a haircut on this cost-wise, but part of it's giving back. Part of it certainly is business, right? I'm hopeful that if I'm here for you at a time when you need the help and it's got to be at a much lower price, that if we help you in the right way and we invest in the right people, and
Stay with you.
yeah, that they'll, loyalty to me is important. I'm very loyal to my clients, try to find every way to solve their problems, and I hope that loyalty is, returned.
Yeah. Well, I think you've got some good Fitzy clients now. Actually,
Yeah.
I'm really excited about that. Great advice. I appreciate that. I'm really going to think differently too. I've always thought attorney, lawyer, counselor. Hadn't heard that before, so that's interesting as well.
I don't know how many times I've thought, man, they should really have psychology classes as a part of law school. Because half the time so you see me sitting and listening most of the time. And it's because, like, this is true everywhere. It's certainly true in the legal field. Well, let me just give you my advice. Let me just tell you how it is. Let me just tell you how you should do it. But if you just sit and listen and take it in, and then I'm always listening to all the other folks, because they are, as you just mentioned, they've all been entrepreneurs.
Right.
So I'm learning from them at the same time, and I try to find the area that's right for me to offer counsel and advice on. I don't know all those other areas, and I'm learning from them just as much as all of the Fitzy clients are learning. And then I chime in where it's the right spot for me, where I can be most value added.
Well, you always do. That's for sure. What would you like to leave somebody with from a quote or a book? Something along those lines in terms of some sort of advice that has helped you.
Well, I guess the one is the one I just talked about that I'll say again. Chop the wood, stack it neatly, help the person next to you. And that last piece, that helping the person next to you, is huge, because you often think, I think the same thing as a lawyer, right? Man, I get through the day, I've done so much, I'm exhausted. But there's always a point where I need help from somebody else, right? And the most likely way someone else is going to want to help me is if I've been there to help them. And it's the same thing in business. And it might be an hour, having a cup of coffee in the morning somewhere. It might be something much more valuable than that. But that third component is important. And then, and again, this is kind of in the legal arena, but when I was an infantry officer, I sat in a meeting one time where I don't even know why I was there, but the brigade commander was speaking to his attorney. And I must have been on staff or something at that point. But I remember the brigade commander, who now in my business life I think of as kind of that CEO, right? That's he or she's in charge, making decisions, maybe chief operating officer, had something that he was trying to accomplish. And the lawyer, the JAG there, kept saying, oh, we can't do that. We can't do that. And I very clearly remember the brigade commander at that point telling his lawyer, you don't get paid to come here and tell me what I can't do, right? Like, stop bringing your problems to me.
Right.
You come here to fix my problems. You come here to, like, creatively think with us to figure out if we can't go from A to B because it's illegal, it's immoral, it's unethical, it's just got too much risk, it's whatever the problem is. Maybe we need to go from A to C to B. Maybe we don't go to B. Maybe we go to something close to B that still works, right? Like, help me figure out how to get where I'm trying to take my business. So I've carried that with me, and I would suggest to any of our Fitzy clients, or any other business owner for that matter, if you have a lawyer,
Make sure that
make sure they're helping you creatively problem solve. And if they're not,
get a new one.
get a new lawyer. There are lots of us out there, right? I think Miles and Stockbridge is populated with all kinds of really good ones, but there are plenty of other really great law firms, from single, solo practitioners up to, you know, big, huge law firms. Find the right person. And if they're truly good at what they do and they're a good counselor, not just good at their specific legal field, you know, they're going to be significant value added to your business.
And one attorney cannot do everything for you, correct?
That's right.
Good.
Yeah, I mean, right, there's nothing wrong with going to the solo practitioner down the street who is a much lower billable rate to help you, who's a general practitioner, sort of general business, corporate, to help you on maybe putting your operating agreement together or helping you with, something like that. But then when you get to a point where you're like, okay, well, I've got a piece of intellectual property that needs to be protected. Maybe you don't even know what needs to be protected.
Correct.
That practitioner might not be the right person. And if they're trying to do something that's not in their wheelhouse, if I'm trying to do something not in my wheelhouse, right, that's not helpful to you. So you should be looking for those people, regardless of what community they're in or how big of a firm they're at, who says, I know enough about intellectual property that you should be concerned about this copyright matter, this trademark matter, this patent matter. That's not me. I don't know how to do that, but I know that it should be a concern of yours, and I can connect you to these 1 or 2 or 3 people who can take care of it. When someone comes to me with a tax matter, I don't pretend I know anything about tax law. I say, let me get our tax guy, and have you talked to your accountant about this? Because those are the people that you need to talk to.
Right.
Government contracting, here I am. Litigation, here I am.
Right.
But that's what I love about Miles.
I know,
We have
because you
220, 230 lawyers.
You can find just about anybody in terms of specialty and expertise.
And I can probably find someone when you're small, growing, have a limited budget, who is willing to cut their time, fix a fee, do something to help. Because most lawyers, despite the bad rap we have about, you know, knowing it all, or, you know, all lawyers are rich and make a ton of money. I mean, first of all, it's not true for most of us. And quite frankly, most lawyers do want to help.
Yeah.
And they'll figure out a way to make it happen.
Well, I found most people want to help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But oftentimes the first thing you have to do is ask. Like, all those other people out there who could be helpful to you can't divine and like figure out what's on your mind and what you need. But if you reach out and ask, and you're respectful of their time, and you have a focused request that you need, and sometimes you don't know what it is. I got a new business, I got a new name, I've got a new image or symbol, I've got a tagline.
I don't know what I don't know at this point.
But I know I should be doing something. Can you point me down the right path? You're almost always going to find someone who's willing to take an hour or 2 or 6 or whatever it is to sit down, help you figure it out, get you to the right person.
I know you guys are all so incredibly busy, so to have 36, no, actually I've got more than that now, people from the local community who are just brilliant like yourself and help out and come and volunteer their time, 7:30 in the morning, yeah, I really do appreciate it. And many of my entrepreneurs get it. Many of them are extremely grateful. Some of them haven't quite figured out just how valuable it is, how most startups do not have that opportunity to have people like you advising them. So thank you for that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And thank you to Miles and Stockbridge. They have been around for Fitzy since day one. So you guys have really helped Fitzy out. So thank you for that as well.
Yeah.
And
Our pleasure.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
Guys, thanks for watching In the Trenches. You can learn more about our advisors and just the people behind Fitzy at fitzy.org. Have a great day.